Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Guess what? The jury is back. Woody is back. Oh my God. What is about to happen today? All right. Say no more. Say no more. ATL, baby. ATL, baby. Let's go.
Quite this much detail. But I think between Mr. Harvey's and the states, we can cull something valuable from each and formulate an instruction that helps guide the jury.
Your Honor, I erred on the side of inclusion because given the time frame you're under, I thought it'd be easier to delete than to try to craft.
Absolutely,
new
yeah. I mean,
things.
it's no problem.
Yep.
All right. And then we also have the instruction about how to consider and what part or parts of Mr. Copeland's testimony not to consider if he does end up testifying. And I think there's only have y'all come to any agreement about that?
Yeah, I think the state submitted, after Mr. Steele submitted his proposed instruction, we submitted one that sort of altered it a little bit. We haven't yet, after that, we haven't agreed on anything beyond that. I think he just disagreed with.
Okay, so no. This computer has not updated since the 8th. And so even though when I was in my chambers, everything was here, nothing is here right now on this computer. So that's complicating things a bit. So I think I may just have to, turn it off and turn it back on and see if that works. So that's what I'm about to do. In the meantime, y'all can be looking at what each other has submitted, and somebody wants to propose a way to integrate them, that would be great. It's going to take me a few minutes to get everything turned back on again and hope that that works. Thank you. All right, with regard to, I think I can at least work off the paper for Mr. Copeland's potential instructions. Y'all agree about the time after which his testimony and evidence that came in during that testimony isn't to be considered? And it was like 3 p.m., whatever date. Do y'all know whether that happened to be the last break for that day? Because I'm just thinking when I'm telling them, okay, disregard everything after this point in time, it would help if they have a kind of a reference, not to 3 p.m., but to, it's the final break of whatever day it was, Thursday, or we'll also have to figure out which day it was, because that probably will tell them more than June 12th. So what was June 12th? Wednesday. Okay, thank you. Anybody know whether 3 p.m. was the last break of the day for the jury, at least? Because that's when y'all argued the motion to recuse, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so you did that, and then the jury came back and had a couple more hours of testimony that they heard, right?
Yeah, I presented
Yeah.
the motion to the judge. He
Yeah.
stepped off the bench and considered and came back. I don't know, though, whether we had an additional break after that point. Your
Okay,
Honor.
I mean, I know I looked at it as well, but I haven't looked at it, in the last couple of days. If so. Okay, that's fine. All right, if somebody doesn't mind, if you've got it at your fingertips, doing a quick look at that transcript and see whether that happens to be the last one.
We're looking.
Thank you. And I'll try to get signed back on in the meantime. To IT.
Your Honor, we were able to determine that it was the last break of the day.
All right. Great, thanks. All right, since that's what I'm looking at right now is the instructions about Mr. Copeland. If everybody wants to turn to that one, we'll try to hammer that one out. And I think I'm maybe looking at the states, and y'all had the two different proposed instructions. I guess one of them is if he doesn't testify at all, is the top one. Hurstfield put together, if he decides he's not going to testify, then obviously we're going to tell him or tell the jury disregard everything about his testimony and any evidence that was introduced during his testimony.
Would Your Honor consider adding unless and until he decides or?
No, because if he
again?
decide, I mean, yes, I would consider it, and no, I don't want to do it. Because if he decides that he's going to, then we'll tell him at that point, okay, we've got him back, and now here's what you can consider. But I mean, there's no point in trying to sort out, the possibility of that, because it's not an eventuality. So we'll just, at this stage, don't consider anything. And then if it changes, it changes, and I'll instruct them about what's appropriate then. All right, and so I think that one is going to be pretty simple. What I would propose to say in the event that we don't have Mr. Copeland retake the stand, I'm just going to say, before the break, witness Kenneth Copeland was testifying, I instructed and admonish you now that you must disregard any and all of Mr. Copeland's testimony and any evidence introduced during his testimony. And then if he decides he wants to come back later and testify, we'll tell him the details about what parts they can and can't consider. Anybody have an objection to that?
Your Honor, the state would object to them being told to disregard. Once they're told to disregard it, it's that they are putting it out of their mind. And then if they have to come back later on and the court has to tell them, well, put it back in your mind, we would.
Okay, I understand the objection and I overrule it. And in fact, I think I'll borrow your language about put it out of your minds completely. I'm thinking as I type, but let me get it down on paper. And this might fix some of what you're objecting about. All right. I instruct you and admonish you now that you must disregard any and all of Mr. Copeland's testimony and any evidence introduced during his testimony. Unless you are later instructed differently, you may not consider this evidence at all in your deliberations and in reaching your verdict. Thank you. I'm going to take the silence as no objection from anybody else.
No objection on behalf of Mr.
Thank you. All right. All right. Silence. Okay, state.
Unless you are instructed differently, if the court is not inclined to instruct as we requested regarding the lesson to hear from him again, that's the closest we can get to it.
All right. That's the closest we're going to get to it. Okay. Sounds good. All right. Now, with regard to if he does take the stand, we're basically restarting the post 3 p.m. June 12th testimony. So we have to sort out. I think that so a question, in order to not only tell them kind of the time period, which is about 3 p.m. on Wednesday, June 13th, or June 12th. So that would start, I'm now going to instruct you and admonish you that you are to disregard any and all of Mr. Copeland's testimony and any evidence introduced during that testimony.
Instead of pointing out Mr. Copeland's, just say any evidence or testimony beyond a certain point. He was the only witness that testified, but since the court will be, I guess this is
I don't know what you're asking. I mean, I'm going to direct them specifically, hey, we're talking about Mr. Copeland's testimony. So then I would say following the last break at about 3 p.m. Wednesday, June 12th, through when you were, through June 17th, when the point in time when you've been in recess. So my question then is, after I say that gives them sort of the time. Thoughts as to, so the last thing that he was, or the next topic following the break was he was asked about his involvement in the Atlanta Blood Gang, which I can say just to trigger their, okay, so anything I heard after that, that is what the question was following the break. Any objection to asking that or telling them that, just to give them sort of a cue to what the topic was? It disappeared from my screen, but
Your Honor?
yes.
Excuse me, I believe after the break, the first question by Ms. Hilton was, Mr. Copeland, have you heard of YSL?
Okay.
That was sometime before, just before 4 p.m.
I had that same thing I had, I was like, what the fuck I did this shit?
Any objection to,
We're confirming that, Judge, with respect to the.
okay, assuming that's true. After the break, he was asked, are you familiar with YSL? Everything after that's what you're to disregard. And I'll have you give me the direct quote, but.
And Ms. Hilton, I see that on, just so you can find it, I see that on page 105 of the transcript, approximately line 16, if that helps.
All right, so when he was asked immediately before the break, the last topic was his involvement in the Atlanta Blood Gang, and then the jury watched those little bits of one of his statements as an inconsistent statement. And then after the break was the YSL question. So just to give them a frame of reference. Any objection to doing that? And we can include the bit before or just the bit after.
That's fine, Your Honor. It does.
All right, and can you read to me what the question was?
Have you, Mr. Copeland, have you heard of YSL? Yeah.
All right.
And how far did just that?
I mean, it's everything after that, so.
Your Honor, Your Honor, on behalf of Mr. Williams, we would object to pointing them, referencing them to any specific testimony or question whatsoever after the break. We would ask that they not be.
All right, then how about the concept of the last thing that's okay is this was the last thing he testified to that you can consider?
I think we're saying the same thing. We're fine with that.
That you're fine with, okay.
So would the court be then reading the last question and answer that he gave before the break? The court says this was the last thing he testified to?
Microphone, please, Ms. Lowe.
Pull that mic down to you and speak into it. So she's asking, would then the concept be to read the last question and answer? And no, that wasn't really what I was thinking about doing. I was thinking about just saying, this was the topic of his testimony. I mean, if you want to throw out what the last question is and let me think about whether that would in any way help them?
Yes, Your Honor, because I
Okay.
think that otherwise would be,
All right, well, tell me what that is.
the point at which the court stopped to give Mr. Copeland an earpiece appears to be the last thing that happened without talking about the subject.
Okay, but I want to talk about the subject so that they'll have some concept of what's the last thing they can, and also y'all are wanting me rightfully to take their notes. And so they're going to have to figure out what part of their notes,
The last
or
question,
somebody's going to have to figure out what part of their notes are being taken.
the last question that was asked was, and did you leave ABG? Mr. Steele objected and said, I don't think that's what was said. Ms. Hilton said, I'll play it again one more time for you. And the witness said, I can't hear it no matter how many times you play it. And the court asked to see counsel at the bench.
Okay, so what I was proposing was just after he was asked about his involvement in the Atlanta Blood Gang ABG. Or after he testified about his involvement, was asked about, I don't know if he did. Yeah.
On page 97, before the break, Ms.
Mhm.
Hilton asked, have you ever claimed to be a part of ABG? And the witness said, me. And Ms. Hilton said, Atlanta Blood Gang. He said, never. And then she asked him whether he recalled being interviewed by the Atlanta Police Department on January the 11th with Investigator Thorpe. He said yes. And then at that time, she tendered State's Exhibit 378 Yankee Alpha between 3:29:46 to 3:30:13.
What was the date of that interview?
January the 11th,
Okay.
2015.
Interview with whom?
Detective Thorpe.
Okay.
And she played,
APD?
yes.
Okay. Okay.
And then she played a portion of it, 3:29:46 to 3:30:13. Mr. Shard objected. It was overruled. That portion was played. Ms. Hilton then said that she asked, was he ever a part of ABG? And we went back to that particular portion of the statement. There was an objection, and the objection was overruled. Mr. Steele's objection was overruled. Again, Ms. Hilton asked, did you hear when he asked you, he being Detective Thorpe, asked you, Mr. Copeland, you left ABG? And you said yes. Ms. Hilton, Mr. Copeland said, he asked me what? Ms. Hilton said, did you leave ABG? Mr. Steele said, I don't think that's what was said. I object to the statements. Ms. Hilton then said, I'll play it one more time for you. That's when the witness said, I can't hear it no matter how many times you play it. And
Okay. All right. So then what I would propose is I'm now going to instruct you and admonish you to disregard any and all of Mr. Copeland's testimony and any evidence introduced during that testimony that came after the 3 p.m. break on Wednesday, June 12, 2024, which was the last break for that day. That is, you are to disregard any and all testimony and evidence that came, hang on, that came after the questioning and answers about Mr. Copeland's involvement in the